Welcome to the Rinkside Rundown podcast, showcasing the incredible women's hockey players from around the world through compelling interviews and discussions alongside your host, Chris Sinclair. Hello and welcome back to the Rinkside Rundown podcast. Today I'm excited to be joined by Johanna Bernardi, an in-game host for both the Ottawa 67s and PWHL Ottawa. Johanna, thanks for joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, so am I. I can't wait to learn a little bit more about you, your experiences both in journalism as well as being an in-game host, what that's been like, and especially in this inaugural season for PWHL. So let's dive in. Does that sound good?
Let's do it.
Nice. First of all, I have to ask, what's it like to be on that side of the conversation rather than on this side where you're the one asking the questions?
It is very weird, and I found it to be a very jarring experience. Actually, I did it probably for the first time this year during the PWHL Ottawa Fan Fest, and we had Emma Buckles interview me, and I was like, oh, this is weird. It felt weird to have like the mic out of my hand. It's like, that's like my safety blanket, and I was like, don't take it from me, and then like having her asking me the questions. But actually, like, it gives me like a sense of like sympathy for the players. I know some people that like don't want to be interviewed, and so then they're like scared or nervous, sorry, or like whatever. And now I understand, because when it's turned the other way, I'm like, oh, I can see why maybe you're not crazy about it. But it's a different experience, but I like it. Try some new skills.
Okay, so first of all, I was actually inspired to ask this question based off of that exact scenario. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Could you tell me what what a little bit more about what that experience is like, and maybe expand a little bit upon some of those skills that maybe you learned from being, I mean, I know it's maybe only twice that you've been on your current side of this conversation, but maybe some of those skills that you learned from being on that side of the conversation.
Yeah, I think it's definitely like a key skill is your personality, like being personable and making someone feel comfortable. And that's like, I think something that I went to journalism school. So that was something that was like really echoed as an important skill. And I think when I'm that other person, like in those situations where I'm the one being asked the questions, is if I can feel more comfortable with that person, then I'm more likely to like answer, give like fuller answers than you might not get if you're kind of standoffish with someone. And I know myself, like I tend to be like, this is probably surprising, but I tend to be a little bit more introverted. And so I appreciate when someone makes me feel comfortable, then I'm more likely to like speak out. So definitely, I think that that's something that's been like really key, especially working in the Ottawa 67s, where these are like younger athletes. And this is a lot of the time their first experience being interviewed, making them feel comfortable. Like I'm someone, like a friend, like they can talk to. I think that's really important.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a lot about chemistry, right? Like the quicker you're able to develop chemistry with the person you're speaking with, the easier it is for them to be able to feel comfortable in providing you, especially in hockey, there are often, I would say it's less so with the junior leagues as well as with the PWHL, but typically there are chances you're going to get those like stereotypical, like get pucks in deep and like those stereotypical answers. So it sounds as though, correct me if I'm wrong, but the quicker you're able to establish that chemistry, the more likely it is for you to be able to get a more authentic, more genuine answer that kind of showcases their personality a little bit more, right?
For sure. And you probably feel a similar way, like being around, like in the environments, like around the teams a lot. Like not so much with PWHL, like we did have the one fan fest this year, which was great to like be more one-on-one with the players, like off camera, but also with like 67s, we'll do like post-game skates and things like that, other sort of events where I get to speak more one-on-one with the players, like off camera. So in those like moments is really when you learn more about them. They're more inclined to like open up to me, talk to me normally off camera, like a friend. And then when we're on camera, they already have that rapport with me. And so I think that's sort of like a lucky situation for like beat reporters or like in-game hosts, is you're with these people like a long time. And I think like even you would see this in other journalistic industries like politics. If you're covering always like the federal government, then you're speaking to the same people a lot. You sort of build that relationship. I think that's really key in like getting those answers that you're looking for.
Yeah, I would definitely agree, especially that off camera, like off the record, those kinds of conversations go a long way to being able to build that rapport. When it comes to then having to be on camera and they just feel so much more comfortable with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really important.
Um, Before we get into the aforementioned journalism career and then how you've been able to translate that to your time with the Ottawa 67s and PWHL Ottawa, I'd love to learn a little bit more about like your enthusiasm for sports, especially in this case, obviously hockey, is very, very clear. And I was wondering, like, what was it about, hockey sports that kind of drew you in, and then obviously spurred your, or clearly spurred your journalism career.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of a unique case. Like my origin story is kind of unique. I did not play any sports growing up. Like I played Timbit soccer, like every kid does, but I didn't play hockey. Like I was not the athletic kid. I was the theater kid. So I was always doing plays, like singing lessons, dancing. Like that was my repertoire. But my brother was the athlete. And so I spent, when I wasn't at like play rehearsal, I was at my brother's hockey or my brother's baseball, and so I kind of like had this interesting persona about myself, like in elementary school, where I really like projected that I hated sports. And I did a speech, my public speaking like speech contest, I think in grade 6, and it was like called "Why I Hate Being a Hockey Sister." And I basically just stood on stage for 5 minutes, being like, "Being a hockey sister sucks. Don't sign up for it." And like, but that was never the truth. Like, I always deep down really loved sports. I think I just kind of was like hiding it a little bit. But I watched like a lot of like Sports Center growing up, and so like I was obsessed with Jay and Dan on Sports Center when I was a kid, and that was like, okay, I want to do that, but because there was like no representation of women doing that job when I was a kid, I think like whether this was like a conscious choice or subconscious, I kind of was like, okay, that's really not possible for me because I don't see anyone like me doing it. So I really like heavily turned towards acting, and like that was going to be my thing. Like I was going to be an actress. I was going to move to New York once I graduated university, and I was going to like be on Broadway. And that was like my life trajectory. And I think like actually like the pivotal moment for me was when I like was obsessed with Dancing with the Stars as a kid, and Erin Andrews was on one season, and I like remember so vividly seeing her like intro package like in that first episode, and like seeing a clip of her like sideline reporting like when she was in university. It's like before she was like on ESPN or Fox, and I was like, wait, she does that as a job, and she's like a woman, and she's like a beautiful woman, and she's so successful. And I was like, oh my gosh. So that like kind of then gave me like a crisis. I was like, what do I do? Do I be a sports journalist or do I be an actress? And so that kind of like put me in that path. And then as I like started getting older and I went to high school, I started realizing like the thing about sports that I love is like I love sports and I'll watch any sport and I love the game. But for me, like it was more about like the people like behind it. That's what really like motivated me. I was really interested in. I was interested to know what people's background was, because I think that's what draws other people to sports is like, okay, maybe you don't care to watch the game, like that's fine. But like, I mean, maybe someone had a similar upbringing to you. Maybe they're from a similar town or something. They went to school for a certain thing that you went to school for. That's what you're going to relate to. And then you start getting invested in these people and you're more likely to watch the game. And then maybe that's how you learn about the game. And I think like sport is a great way for community. And I think that's how you start building that community. And like I was in grade 12, it became time to decide like, okay, do I go to theater school or do I do journalism school? And I decided to go to journalism school. It was kind of like, you be a starving journalist or a starving actress. What's the choice? I chose starving journalist, and that's the way I went. And so I then when I was like in school, I think I did like general journalism, not like sport media, which I know is like offered at some schools. But I did like a huge focus on sports. Like most of my stories were sport oriented. And then I like graduated and I was like, okay, what is my passion? Is my passion sports or is my passion journalism or is it sports journalism? I'm not really sure. And so then I took that, like, after I graduated, I took a year and was like, okay, we're just going to work in sports specifically, not journalism specific. And then maybe I'm want to just be involved in sports somehow. And then I've been in my working at Carleton University in the athletics department for the past 3 years, which has been awesome to see that other side of the sport world. I've really enjoyed that. But then I kind of wanted to get back into like the journalism side of things, which is what led me to starting with the 67s. And that's how I got that experience. And then I got the PWHL opportunity from working with the 67s. So that's really been fantastic to have like both sides and get to do a little bit of everything.
So And we're gonna get into kind of how you got like maybe a little bit more specific, just for people who may not know, may be interested in being able
Yeah.
to have that opportunity. We're gonna get into that in just a moment. But pivoting from theater acting, which is actually my background as well, so that's
Oh, wow.
interesting, to journalism. I mean, that's not that isn't necessarily an easy like a natural like yes, I'm going to go from being an actor to being in journalism. I
Mhm.
mean, maybe there's some carryover abilities there, but like what was that transition like and like what was it like to be able to kind of move from acting to journalism, and what was, I guess it sounds like the motivation there was just your passion for sports?
Yeah.
Yeah, would it be your passion for sports superseded your passion for theater and acting?
Yeah, I think so, and I found that, um, like, for me, like, being on camera, broadcast journalism of some, like, sort is my wheelhouse, and so I found that that kind of was a similar tie into the acting world, like, still
Mm,
performing, which is definitely very like, it's become very important when working in these, like, live sporting events when you're sold out with 8,000 people, is luck I'm not nervous in front of crowds because I'm used to performing in front of people. So that definitely is like a perk of coming from the acting background. It definitely was difficult in terms of like starting journalism school. You really start with like the writing focus, which is great. And I really do love written form journalism as well. But I was really ready to get like I wanted to be on camera. And so then trying to like make that shift back to like rewriting and you kind of something I found interesting like being in journalism school is you really it's a whole new skill that you learn from scratch. Like anything like you learned in English class, like okay, great, you learned like good words, grammar, whatever. But the style of writing in journalism is nowhere near how you write like an essay or anything that you really learn in school, in high school. And so that was like learning a completely different skill, which was like an interesting challenge to have to overcome for those like first year. But then once like you get it going, it's a lot of like similar things that the journalism as a whole rather than just like the actual producing the final product like there I'm sure you understand like there's so many different things that go into it whereas like you all you see is the thing on the end like is the article or this video but you didn't see like the 9,000 people I called the rejected phone calls that I got the like interviews I did the interviews that didn't work out that I did and didn't make the piece and things like that and so luckily that sort of like skill of like talking to people and being kind of dogged I think which are like I don't know if I even like that word, but like having to keep that like persistence to keep going is something that I think I like kind of learned in acting. You get used to the rejections. You don't always get the role you want, so you are used to people in a different way hanging up the phone and saying no, I don't want to talk to you, and having to like keep going with the stories. So that I think that kind of related in the end.
yeah, and it's fascinating, especially learning that you know, you have a theater background, because I think that's something that is key in terms of how you uh, kind of portray yourself as your, I don't want to say portray yourself, but like
Yeah.
how you are as a as an in-game host. I think that obviously that shines through every chance anyone gets an opportunity to see you hosting in-game hosting, whether it's the 67s or the or PWHL Ottawa. Um, how do you think your time in journalism has helped you to become a better in-game host?
For sure. I think it's been like extremely helpful. I think like first of all, when it comes to like asking the players questions, that's some like and doing those on ice interviews, whether that be like post game, like in game, pre game, that like knowing how to ask like a well formed question and like do the research prior, like that's something that I really pride myself on. Is I like try to go into the game like always having a background on the game before, knowing the players, knowing the stats. That way, when I get to ask a question, it's not like just like, how do you feel right now? Like I want to ask like an in-depth question. Although you do have to ask those how do you feel questions. You can't assume how anyone feels at all times. So like you have to ask that, but I want to make sure that I can ask like well-informed questions. And so that's something that's like really benefited that sort of role. And that's like the thing that like drives me is I love that's like my favorite part is doing the post game interviews or whatever pre-game interviews. So I'm making sure I'm always like well rounded. I know my facts. And then I think just that sort of sense of like having that performing, being able to be in front of a camera, being comfortable in front of a camera. Like, no, it's like so interesting. I think often people, we feel like we know how to be in front of a camera. Like people are in front of cameras all the time. But like when I was in journalism school, like learning like what to do with your hands, like you either commit to using your hands or you don't use your hands because now it's distracting because it's in and out. And like things like sort of like that, like how to present yourself, how to stand, how to like smile and keep those things going. So that I take a lot of those things that I learned in school and apply them today.
And it's those things because I'm like when I talk, like I found that I'm someone who I will like I'm very much like like my hand motions are half my story basically.
Yeah.
So it's I think this is one of the reasons I know this is one of the reasons why I wanted to have the opportunity to connect with you was to be able to learn to kind of maybe see a peek behind the curtains as to not just what it means to be in journalism, but what it means to like learn those habits and what it goes like. Those are all things that are running through your head as you're having a conversation, right? You're like, oh, gotta put my hands in my pockets, gotta like, sit on my hands or do something so that I'm not all like, it's not just all hands or it's not all like that it doesn't take away from me, it doesn't take away from the interview. And it's those little things that I don't know that people necessarily um pick up on because we're just so used to seeing it every day, right? Whether
Yeah.
it's a national broadcast, whether it's in game. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's definitely something that like you learn and acquire over time. I think when I look back, my first season with the 67s was 2022, 2023. So I've only just like done 2 seasons with them. But even like looking back from like that first season to now, I've improved so much. And so it does sometimes doesn't feel it in the moment, but like there's definitely been a growth. And so it's kind of for me, like I love live sports because it's such like an adrenaline fueled thing. Like I don't bring my papers out with me. So everything I do is memorized. Sometimes I don't see the script until I arrive at the arena, like an hour and a half before. So I'm just like memorizing on the fly. And that's also something that theater benefited for me. I'm very good at memorizing. So that's like a good skill to have. But there's so many things like just like going on in your head. You're thinking like, okay, I gotta get the sponsor tagline in some cases. And that's like very important. Obviously, like it's important to me, but the sponsorship people who are there, they want to make sure that that's in there. So that's what that people want. The game day people want to make sure that it's like a fun atmosphere and I'm having fun and whatever, and getting the fans involved. So then like you got to different people are expecting different things from you. The players maybe want like a good like conversation and things to go their way. And so there's lots of people looking for different things. And so it's definitely like a bit of a juggling act, but that practice, like that repetition, it just really helps so much. And then, although like the first few games I did it, there were so many things going on in my mind. I couldn't even tell you. It was like swirling tornado inside. But now I'm just like, there's less things going on. I'm pretty good with like keeping my memorization. It's kind of second nature in some cases. So it just comes out of me, whether I want it to or not. And so it's just like that, definitely that practice. That's like the key to getting used to it. And it's practice in front of a live audience. It's totally different doing it in front of fans than doing it to yourself in the mirror, although that's like great practice and I still do that. But being like in front of people is totally different. You don't know when people are going to talk to you and like yell something back. Like, do I yell back at them? What's kind of it going to be like? So it's a totally a different experience, but practice definitely makes perfect.
Absolutely. And again, as someone who has been on stage in front of people, I can tell you it is very, very different than just looking at yourself in a mirror. You
Yeah.
have to kind of go with it. You kind of have to go with the flow. Whether you mess up a line, whether someone heckles you or something like that, you just kind of have to be free flowing. And I think that's something especially as someone who's watched you this season with the PWHL, I think that's one of the things that people really appreciated most about you. Obviously, there are so many things to appreciate about you, but one of the things was just like you just were. It was just fun. It looked like it was just fun every day for you. So I think that's something to walk away from this inaugural season knowing is that fans like it was a good vibe in there, and you helped with that. Great job with that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It definitely like helps that it is literally just the most fun job. Like I often have to pinch myself and be like, cannot believe they're paying me to watch hockey and then every now and then talk on the mic and talk about the game and talk to the players. Like it really doesn't get better than this. Like there's nothing more I could ask for, and the fans are so amazing that makes my job a lot easier.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a job. This doesn't feel like a
No.
job when you get like, you're like, "I would have been doing this anyway, and
Yeah.
now I get a chance to actually get paid to do it." That's incredible.
Yeah, it's the best thing in the world. I'm so lucky.
Before we get more into, we're going to be a little bit more, obviously, with this being a women's hockey podcast, we're going to talk a lot more about the PWHL Ottawa. But I want to know, before we get there, I want to provide you an opportunity to just kind of like, you've, as we've shared, you have a journalism, you're going through journalism, you're studying journalism, you've had an opportunity to share a ton of different stories. What are some of the highlights for you when it comes to specifically your journalism career, not your in-game host career?
Yeah, so I think like I've kind of like moved away from working specifically in journalism over the since I've graduated, but in my time like at school, I got to meet so many interesting people, make so many great connections and learn so many interesting things. When I like look back, honestly, the highlight of my journalism school career was discovering blind hockey like for myself and then getting like to tell that story. That was something that I had never heard of. And I think like this situation like with me and blind hockey really is the reason we do journalism and the reason that journalism exists. So I'd never even heard about blind hockey before. And then I saw some like event on Facebook and they were like doing a blind hockey, I think like a tryout or something at TD Place. And I was like, okay, I have to go to this. Like, what is this? I need to learn. And I like told my professor, I was like, this is what I want to cover. And they were like, I've never heard of blind hockey. Like, what is this about? And so he was like, hey, you have to go because like someone has to find out what this is about. And so I went and I learned so much and I like did many stories on blind hockey afterwards. Like I did a feature piece, I did a bunch of other things for them. And it was just like the most unbelievable experience. I learned so many different things, learned about a new side of hockey that I'd never heard about before, but definitely it's getting more attention over the past few years, which is fantastic, but it needs more attention. Like that should be a Paralympic sport. And I know they're working towards that. I know that's their goal. But it's unbelievable. I'm getting to meet so many interesting people through that. And like myself, I felt like a consumer. Like often they say like in journalism, like you need to be the expert kind of on everything. You need to have a lot of knowledge on basically anything, especially if you're a general news reporter. But often we as the journalists, we come across things we've never heard of before, never seen. And that's how you become the expert is you have to research it a lot and get that knowledge and talk to the right people. But that was just like the highlight of I've been telling so many like traditional sports stories. And then finally I got to like find this like little nugget that no one here that I knew had heard of. And people didn't believe me when I told them about it. And so that was like really the highlight and really encapsulated my whole journalism experience.
And now a word from our sponsor.
This episode is sponsored by Durant Barristers. Durant Barristers is a proud supporter of women's sports and is an inaugural sponsor of the Rinkside Rundown podcast. Durant Barristers provides legal services for athletes, coaches, officials, administrators, and sports associations of all sizes, from minor associations to national sports organizations and professional sports environments. We routinely assist with safe sport complaints, investigations, anti-doping, harassment, discrimination, abuse, and governance matters. We also provide representation on general civil litigation matters, including employment and business disputes of all sizes. Durant Barristers founder Aaron Durant also provides mediation and arbitration services to assist in managing disputes in a timely and affordable manner. Durant Barristers has generously offered their best ever discount to fans and supporters of women's hockey. Mention the Rinkside Rundown podcast to, wait for it, receive 15% off all your accounts with Durant Barristers for the duration of your relationship with the firm. To learn more about Durant Barristers, visit www.durantbarristers.com. That's www.durantbarristers.com. Thank you to Durant Barristers for sponsoring this episode.
And now back to the show.
What were some of the takeaways that you took from from learning about blind hockey? And especially, it's one thing to learn about blind hockey, but it's another thing to actually be able to connect with the athletes and to be able to speak with them and things like that. What were some of the takeaways from that maybe you've been able to apply in some degree as you've continued being able to connect with players obviously in still in hockey, but in a very obviously different kind of way.
Yeah, I think it honestly, like a lot of this is transferable to the PWHL. Like these are groups we're talking about who aren't traditionally represented in hockey. They're not like the white male that you're always seeing. And so like now it's amazing. Now they have like the PWHL Professional Women's League. But before, like often it's that sense of community. Like they're working obviously other jobs and doing other things. And so I found like the blind hockey players, like similar to the women's players, is they've created this sense of community and like this team, and they're like the blind hockey represents Canada, and they do these things and they have that like national pride and things that the women's athletes get. So it's definitely like that sense of community, and how hockey is more than just like a sport. It's more than just what you see on the ice. It's like the thing that people make connections, they make friends, maybe makes them feel like a sense of normalcy, someone that like people they can look towards, people they can lean on. Maybe they were feeling isolated before, you don't know people, maybe you didn't know other people like with blindness. And so now you've made new connections that you didn't have before, and people who can relate to you. And so it's about that grander community that I think, like I kind of touched on earlier, that's what's so important to me about sport, is the community that it forms. And I think that that's what the blind hockey really showed me.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and it's all about highlighting. And you touched on it perfectly. It's about highlighting those communities that or those individuals who may not have otherwise had an opportunity to be highlighted. And they're all incredible athletes, and it's just about telling their story, right? And
Yeah,
being authentic and genuine. And I think that's one of the things that's really special about journalism, right?
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Um, we spoke about it a few moments ago, just around obviously, as we've mentioned, your you're with you're with the Ottawa 67s. You're also with PWHL Ottawa. Could you talk a little bit more about how those opportunities came about and what those opportunities have meant to you?
Yeah, so my hosting experience kind of started at Carleton University. After I graduated, I had been in the Raven Sports Business Club during my time in university, so I was already very involved in the athletics department. And then when I graduated, I was very lucky. They said to me, "Do you want to stay?" And I was like, "Yep." So like every post grad like person's dream, like I didn't have to find it, go through that whole process. So I stayed at Carleton. When I started, my role was like a lot less defined, and I kind of took it as my mission to say yes to everything. Like I was working all the time. If there was a job that was like the most random job ever, like I was the anthem singer, I was the DJ during like games, I did like guest services, I did literally every job. I did like social media. If there was a job to be done, I was going to do it. And that led me to in-game hosting. I didn't think one time they didn't have an in-game host, and I said, "I'll do it. Give me the mic." And so I wasn't like consistent in game hosting. I was doing most of the games, but I in game hosted for all of the Big Eight sports at Carleton, which definitely gave me a well-rounded background. Because if you've ever like been to a university sporting event here in Canada, it's not always to like the same extent of what we picture in the States, like sold out crowds. Sometimes you're doing to like one quarter of a crowd. Definitely more people need to go out to university sports, but
Yep.
that's a side point.
Yep.
But and then also it's like different fan bases. Like the football fans are different from the soccer fans, are different from the basketball fans, and different venues. Like our football field and our soccer field and our rugby field is like one space. Then the basketball court, everyone is a lot closer. Like the sidelines are come right down, or the stands come right down to the sidelines. So you're a lot closer, where there's that divide between you and the football stands. And then in hockey, our hockey arena is like oddly laid out, but the hockey, like the stands are up and like on the second level, and then the ice is below. So I'm below on the ice, like I can hardly see the fans, they're very far away. And so learning like how to adapt in these different environments. And so that was like kind of my gateway into doing it. And then I started with the 67s. I literally just saw like an Instagram post that was like, "We're hiring an in-game host." And I was like, you know what? It can't hurt to try. And so then I applied for it and I auditioned, and I was very lucky. I got that role. And I think that my previous experience working like the game day side, and not even just like as an in-game host, but also doing everything else like ticketing and singing and DJ and like all those things, I sort of got a full picture of what it looks like to run a game, because I can understand there's more. It's not just about the product on the field, it's about the whole experience. And so I think that that was beneficial to me when I applied. I was so excited to get the 67s because I really like that was kind of my niche was prospects and like the CHL. That's like where my passion had lied. I love seeing players before they become the player that you know, and it's like following their careers. Like it really started for me like with like Mitch Marner and the London Knights. I followed him so closely. I'm not a Leafs fan, so I was like devastated when he got drafted by the Leafs, but that's fine. And that was like kind of where I started like discovering like you see these players and then all of a sudden they're Connor McDavid or like whoever, Mitch Marner. And so that was like kind of like my first era of like introduction into the OHL before I was like in high school. And that was like my thing. Like I knew all the stats about the prospects. Like, I was counting down the days until the NHL draft, like finally get to see these people make their dreams come true. And so then when I got to start with the 67s, then I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm right up close watching these players develop and watching these players grow. And then all of a sudden they're going to be in the NHL, and that's just amazing. And my first ever actually interview in the 67s during like first period intermission interview was with Vinny Rohr, who is a Montreal Canadiens draft pick or prospect now, and I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan. So that was like such a pinch me moment. I was like, oh my goodness, like all I've ever wanted is to like interview a Montreal Canadiens prospect, and here I am interviewing one like on the first day. It was like so surreal. And so that was just like absolutely unbelievable. And so that was my first season with the 67s, 2022, 23. And then this was my second season, 23, 24. And about maybe like around November, I was at one of the games waiting to go and do a hit. And I can like, I've got like my earpiece in so I can hear a little bit of chatter. And then I hear them say like, oh, put the camera on Johanna. Like, we're just going to talk to her for a second. So then they like, I'm not doing a hit. I'm not on screen. It's just they're upstairs. They can see me on their monitors. So that's how they're talking to me. And they just say to me, they're like, hey, like, so if the PWHL were to be interested in you being the host, would you want to be the host? And I was like, yes, I would want to be the host. I was like, please. And then he was like, okay, well, they've asked for you, so I'll connect you with them and that'll be that. And I was like, oh my goodness, like I couldn't believe it. Like when I heard that Ottawa was getting a PWHL team, I was like, I need to be a part of this. How? I'm not sure, but I'm going to be a part of it somehow. And I was very lucky that they had seen me at the 67s, and that kind of just like fell into my lap. I'm so blessed for that. And then like being a part of this inaugural season has literally been just the most unbelievable and life-changing experience. I always say that like I'm an emotional person, but like every game I'm like fighting back tears. It's just so emotional to see these women who've worked so hard for so long like achieve this amazing feat, and then just like turning out into the stands and seeing these kids just like these little girls and little boys alike having their favorite players, and they've got their signs and they're ready and they're so excited, and like to be a small part of that is just unbelievable. And like I kind of mentioned earlier, like for me, even whether or not I knew it, representation was something I needed to get to where I am today. And so finally, for like these little girls to have this representation that they've been longing for is just so unbelievable and is so exciting to be a part of. It's just like goosebumps every game. I love it.
It's interesting. You provided the perfect segue. So, obviously this moment for women's hockey is absolutely incredible. And you are a part of an inaugural season. Like you were the in-game host for an inaugural season of this incredible league. And we've seen, whether it's people watching on YouTube, or whether it's, 13,000 fans at a game or 26,000 fans that like just outstanding numbers for this season. I know you spoke a little bit about it, but could you just take a moment, maybe just to kind of zoom out and think about both what this, what it really means to you personally, moving in this moment, but also moving forward, but what you think this moment and this, I know that it's cliched, but this moment and this movement really means for women's hockey, as we get through the playoffs and as we go into the draft and free agency and then the second season.
Yeah. Some like you kind of said like inaugural season. So I think my parents said to me like after the first game, they're like, you are the first ever host for PWHL Ottawa. And I was like, that's crazy. Like I never expected to like be the first of anything. And like that's what's happening for these women is like they're the first to be a part of this league, the first like trailblazers, literally. And so it's so hard to believe, but I think like something that really, a moment that happened this year that really like encapsulated like the feeling for me was during the PWHL Fan Fest. I was going around, I was like asking girls and like kids who were there, what kind of questions would you want to ask the players? Like, what do you want to know? And the popular question was, what's your favorite ice cream flavor? But I did get that one in there. But one little girl like wanted to know like how they got into hockey, like sort of that stuff, or how, I think it was for Mashmeyer, they wanted to know how she started playing goalie. And then I said to the little girls, I was like, do you want to be a hockey player or like do you want to be a host? Because they had talked about wanting to like take the mic. So do you want to be a hockey player or do you want to be a host? And they said, oh, I want to be both. And that kind of moment, I was like, this is what it's about. Is it's not like, yes, you're right. You can be anything. You can be a professional hockey player, or you can be a host, or you can be both. And no one has to limit that for you. And I think like this past year, this like movement of you can literally be whatever you want to be. And I know this is like cheesy with the Barbie movie last year, but I felt like that was the message of the Barbie movie as well. And so it's like really, and Barbie's a sponsor for the PWHL. Like it's really like a fitting time of like all these things coming together. And I think like you can see this broader grasp of people's passion for the PWHL. And I think people, you know, at first like, oh, who's going to watch this? Like only women. And now we're seeing that that's wrong. Like that was wrong initially, but now like the proof is in the pudding. Like that's wrong. Everyone is interested in the PWHL, and they're like, you're seeing it on Sports Center. It's being covered regularly. It's on TSN. It's on Sportsnet. Like it's on these big streaming networks. And I know many men who have been focused on the NHL their whole life, and now they're asking me questions about the PWHL. Oh, is this player in it? Oh, that's great. Oh, I've seen her before in the Olympics. Like it's becoming more than just like a woman's thing. Like it's hockey. It's not even like women's hockey. It's hockey, and it's women's hockey, men's hockey, but it's all the same. It's all hockey. And I think that this is just the start of something really special. And I'm so excited to see where this goes from here. Like when the teams get names, like that's going to be unbelievable for like branding. And then you have the sort of different mascot thing to support, which is going to be unbelievable. And now we're like talking about the draft coming up in a couple of weeks, and that's sort of like building excitement. People are connected with these players. I think something we saw in Ottawa with the trade of Lexi Agia, like so many people were connected to her. And when you look at like the timeline of how quickly, how short it was her time in Ottawa before she left, people already had that like, oh my gosh, like I'm sure there were people crying when she got traded. I was like, what? And like same with when Amanda Boulier was traded. I think she was the first player I interviewed. So that was like hard for me. I was like, oh, don't trade these people. So people are having like connections with these players, and I think it's unbelievable. And I don't think like this is it. Like we're going so much further than this. People are going to continue. There's going to be more fans, more people involved. And it's just like so exciting to be a part of it and have these young girls grow, and whoever else is with these young kids watching, I should say, in the future, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, I've been cheering for PWHL Ottawa since I was like 6. Whereas like so many of us have these stories about like other teams. Like I was born a Montreal Canadiens fan. I've liked Montreal Canadiens my whole life. Think of all the kids who are gonna be like, yeah, I've been an Ottawa fan forever. Like how exciting. And I think that that's really just the beginning of where we're at.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
This episode is sponsored by sports nutritionist Melissa Buffunos of MB Performance Nutrition. As a former competitive hockey player turned nutritionist, Melissa's mission is to help the next generation of hockey players optimize their health and diets so they can perform their best on and off the ice. Ready to dominate on the ice? Melissa's new course, the Hockey Nutrition Blueprint, is opening soon. If you're serious about learning how nutrition can impact performance and building actionable nutrition strategies based on your unique needs as an elite hockey player, get on the waitlist today. Learn more and sign up at melissabuffunos.com/course. That's MELISSABOUFOUNOS.com/course. Thank you to Melissa Buffunos for sponsoring this episode.
And now, back to the show.
I think you nailed it there with the analogy of Lexi Agia and Amanda Boulier, where, what was it? Say 3 months, something like that. And in that amount of time before they were traded, they were both, for a lot of people, they were both like, it's just something you gravitate towards these players because they're more than just we're so used to professional sports being very, and we kind of spoke about it earlier on, where it's you get those cliched answers, you don't really get their personality. But that's one thing that stood out to me about the PWHL and women's hockey in general, but speaking specifically about the PWHL, where it's you actually get their personality, right? Like Agia's walk-ins, like those were things fans waited, like they were like at the game and they were like on their phones waiting for those photos to come out.
Yeah.
And it was just like that was even now that she's not even playing in Ottawa fans are still like, what's your game day fit?
Yeah.
You know? And it's those kinds of personalities that she endeared herself to this community so quickly. And that's why I think it was such an emotional thing. But I think when we zoom out, that's actually the thing with a lot of these players is that they have such incredible personalities and they're not afraid to just be themselves, right? Like this is the first opportunity they've had to be able to be on this stage, to be able to be in front of, 20,000 fans. Like that's something they could have only ever dreamed of. And now it's happening on the regular, right?
Yeah. And I think that speaks to like, this is setting the path. And so hopefully this is something we'll see going forward is we don't fall into that trap of like people closing themselves off and giving stereotypical answers because that's what they feel they have to do. Like from the very beginning of this league, we have shown that you can be yourself and keep true to your personality, which I hope that will carry on. And I think like I always say to people when they ask me about like working at the PWHL and like what's my favorite part is literally you just see the players are so unbelievably kind, like, and they're not, they don't take any of this for granted. Like every moment they're like holding on to the moment like it might be taken from them, which like I think is like true of their situation previously and things they've gone through in the past. But like after every time they come off the ice, they're stopping, they're signing things, they're taking pictures. Like they could very well, like they're professional athletes, they're doing their job. They could very well be like, sorry, like I gotta go to the dressing room and have a pregame meeting with the coach. Nope. They like after warmups, they stop for every person asking for an autograph and they take a picture with every person asking for, I've seen them take fans be reels before. Like they're so engaged with these fans. And I think like that makes these lifelong connections. And these are the memories that people are going to remember forever. And it's because the players are just genuinely good people. Opposing teams they're coming to our arena. They're being booed when they skate on the ice, but they're still stopping for pictures and stopping for things. And I think that just really speaks to the people that are involved in the league.
Absolutely, I agree. And I think you're in a really unique position because you're at ice level, and you have an opportunity to look up into the stands, see the signs, see all the jerseys, all that sort of stuff. When you reflect on this season and being able to look up into the stands, and now I know obviously there's some, you're going through your prep and all that sort of stuff. So it might take a little bit out of that. But what does it mean to you when you look up in those stands and you see those signs and you see the enthusiasm from, especially like it's great from the older fans, but especially from the younger fans?
Yeah, I think like to me, I just like start thinking about the future and all the things that like these young fans are being awarded and like having this opportunity, having this moment, and how this is going to carry on for the future. I feel like I feel like an old person. I'm like, oh, the young people, but it's true. Like I'm looking at these young people and I'm like, you're our future. This is the next generation of this is how things are going to go. They're making these amazing role models. And I think of myself when I was a kid, I secretly loved sports, but I didn't say anything because there was like no other girls that really liked sports. Or if you did, you'd be like labeled as a tomboy. And none of my friends were talking about sports. So I didn't really have anyone to talk about it with. So I was just like, I guess I just hate sports like every other girl, haha. And now that's not the case. Like you're seeing the tides are changing. And I'm sure these little girls go to school the next day and say, oh my gosh, did you see that great goal? Or did you see PWHL Ottawa won? How exciting. Like these are things that they're looking forward to. And I think get for them getting like to be in that arena and be a part of it is unbelievable. And I hope that when these children look back on this, they're thinking like this is normal. Like women playing professional hockey in this sold out arena every night, that's normal. And that's not going to be sort of like an anomaly for them. And it's like so inspiring to see these kids so engaged, and probably this is probably their new obsession. And I love it. And I think they should keep coming and keep being a part of it because they're integral to our experience as well.
Well, and speaking of integral to the experience, that also includes you. And I was wondering if you might have some advice for someone, whether it's, someone a bit older and it's like, you know what, I'm looking for a career change. I just want to try something different. Or it's someone who, is that new fan of women's hockey and is so passionate. What advice might you have for them when it comes specifically to being able to become or look to become an in-game host for whatever league? Hopefully it's the PWHL.
Yeah, I was saying this to someone the other day, and I know it's like sounds like such lame advice, but genuinely to just be yourself, because this industry in like working as a front-facing person, it is so subjective. And I'm fully aware that some people are going to like me and some people are not, and that's fine. That I let that water off the back, like it doesn't bother me anymore. And so why would I act as somebody else when that's still going to be the case? It's not going to change. It might change the people who like you and change people who don't like you, but it's not going to change the amount, like the people that are fans. So to just fully like be yourself, and if you're passionate, that is amazing. People love your passion. That's what drives other people. And that, like, for me, like, I'm so excited the Olympics are coming up, and like I will cry every time someone wins a medal, and not because I'm just an emotional person. Yes, that definitely factors into it, but because you're watching these people's dreams come true. And that's, to me, what makes me emotional. That's what I love about the Olympics and I love about sport, is these are people's dreams coming true. And so if you're passionate about it, you get the passion from the athletes, the fans will be sense your passion as well. And I think like especially at the 67s, this has been something that I've been commenting on a lot, is that I like talk through the entire game. I'm like yelling at the players, I'm banging on the glass, like I'm fully engaged in the game. And like that's something that other people are like, that's so annoying, Johanna, like please stop talking through the game. Like my friends have said that to me in the past, but the fans are like, we love to listen to you talk. It's so funny. Like you say the crazy things. Like it's clear you're just, to me, like there's no one around me. It's just me and the ice, and I'm on the team, it feels like. And so, and people like that. I'm just being myself, even though other people might not like it. You just have to be yourself and people will gravitate to that. And if you're passionate about something, people feel your passion. So just be unabashedly passionate.
Well, I think that's profound advice you could give just in life, but
Yeah.
certainly, and that's fantastic. Absolutely. Be yourself, be your authentic self. And I think that's one of maybe the underlying messages from the PWHL as a whole. Just
Yeah.
be unapologetically your authentic self. And I think that's why you're seeing so many fans coming out. So I think that's profound advice. Now, as we slowly start to wind down this conversation today, this is the segment of the show that I used to call 20 questions, but it never ended up being 20 questions. So I've now just kind of redubbed it a scientifically proven approach to truly being able to understand the guest. I'm still working on the title for it. It's a bit long, but it's accurate in terms
like
of
it.
Yeah, good. I appreciate that. Are you ready to take the test?
I'm ready.
Okay. One of the you've spoken a little bit about FanFest, and there was a specific interview that you did that ended up ultimately leading to something a little bit viral, and that was your conversation with Zoe Boyd.
Yes.
Now, you had asked Zoe Boyd what her favorite or what her go-to karaoke song was, and then obviously the in-game DJ it played it perfectly. And next chance they had, they played Mambo Number 5, and she killed it.
Yes.
Which sparked this question for me to you.
Mhm.
If you had to choose your favorite, your go-to karaoke song, what would it be?
Okay, I've actually never done karaoke before, which is
Oh,
like
what?
surprising as
That's
someone,
crazy.
yeah, and as someone with like a singing background, like get a grip.
And theater.
Yeah, so I don't know why I've not done karaoke before, but it definitely would be something Taylor Swift. I am like a hardcore Swiftie. And so really you could just play any of them and I would be happy to do it, but probably I would have to go with All Too Well 10-minute version just to really bask in taking that first karaoke experience, go 10 minutes and just sing that song. It's my favorite song of all time.
Okay, so fun fact, I actually have that one queued up, so I'll get you to start. I'm kidding, I
Oh
don't.
God. Okay,
That
we're
would
in
have
for a
been great.
long one. Everybody get ready. 10
Yeah,
minutes
brace
later.
yourself. This is gonna be great. It's her first time. No, I'm kidding. I don't have it lined up, but that's good to know. I'll
Yeah.
do it for next time. Um, this is something that I ask all the players as well that I've had an opportunity to connect with, and I think it's something I've never had. Obviously, I've never had an opportunity to connect with you, so I was wondering, what's your go-to pregame meal?
Yeah, it's pasta. Probably like pasta with pesto. I am not a good chef, even slightly, and my pregame ritual, especially on a weeknight, is pretty rushed. I come home from my full-time job and have to get ready and then also eat. So pasta is pretty quick, and you can do many things at the same time as cooking pasta. You don't have to stand there and watch it. So that is my ideal pregame meal. So always pesto pasta.
I thought for sure you were yanking my chain on that one, because that's usually the answer I get. What I will say, and I say this often, is I've been told pasta and Alfredo sauce.
Ooh, see, I'm Italian, and so the
Oh, that makes
I'm like a bit picky when it comes to sauce, and like unless it's made by my mom, and I don't live with my mom, so that's unfortunate. Or like if someone's nonna, then I'm probably not inclined to eat it. But pesto, I find is like
mm.
pretty safe to get out of the jar. Whereas like I wouldn't not buy like a tomato sauce. Like I'm such a snob when it comes to food. I would not buy tomato sauce
Italian
out of the
background.
jar.
It's totally understandable. I get that. I
Yeah.
get that. I get that. Okay, if you could listen to only one song for the rest of your life, what would it be? Now, you don't. It doesn't have to be you are. It's constantly on repeat. But if you were to listen to a song, this was the only song that you could put on.
Oh my goodness. That is such a hard question.
I'm assuming Taylor Swift.
Yeah, like see, my thing is like I'm automatically thinking Taylor Swift and but the thing is I couldn't narrow down to one song. So I'm gonna go kind of rogue and something people would never expect from me. But I think Scenes from an Italian Restaurant by Billy Joel, because it
Mm,
has originally, I believe this could be totally a lie, but I believe that when he wrote it, it was originally written as three separate songs and then together, and like you can kind of hear it where like one song would be and then the next song and the other song. And so that, because then you're kind of like getting three songs in one. So it's like for different moods. You can listen to the first part, so it's a bit slower, and then kind of really pick things up in the middle part of the song. So I think that that kind of gets a good balance of everything.
all right. So a very strategic decision. I respect that. I respect that.
Yes.
Lastly, what is something that's on your bucket list, whether it's on or off the ice?
Ooh, something that's on my bucket list. Probably to go to an Olympics, whether that be like working as an Olympics or working at the Olympics, which would be like an absolute dream. So yeah, I'll say working at the Olympics. Like working at the Olympics in any shape or form would be unbelievable. I love the Olympics and it's something that like I will be glued to my couch for 2 weeks or 3.5, 3 weeks of summer. I love it so much and I think it'd be such a cool thing to be a part of.
All right. And there you go. That is completed the scientifically proven test to get to know you.
Yeah. I'm
I
excited
feel
for
like,
my results. Like what did I get evaluation?
yes, absolutely. It'll be mailed to you. Don't worry.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yes. So, Johanna, unfortunately, the time has come now to say goodbye. But I did want to say how much I appreciated the fact that you took time out of your busy schedule to be able to hang out, get to know one another, share your story. It's really meant a lot to me. So, I just wanted to say once again, thank you so much.
Thank you. I really enjoyed being on it. This is a great time, and I will definitely be down to come back if given the opportunity.
If, when given the opportunity, because
When.
yeah, you're coming back. You're coming back for sure.
Amazing. With some Taylor Swift.
Yeah,
Too.
exactly. Yeah, that'll be the intro music for you
Yeah,
then.
that's my walk up.
Yeah,
Taylor
yeah,
Swift.
absolutely, absolutely. And there you have it, folks. For Johanna Bernardi, I'm Chris Sinclair, and this has been the Rinkside Rundown podcast. Cheers.